Josh, Modern Muscle Garage. All right, I said in my short video we was going to start the tutorials today, and we are. I'm going to start first. My wife's Hellcat was already on the lift, so we're going to start with that one first. We've owned this car for about a year. It doesn't get driven a whole lot. It's her secondary car, her toy. So this is the first oil change. I have not done an oil change on this yet, so I'm not unsure of the drain plug sizes and oil filter, even the oil filter location. Anyway, I'm going to show you what all you need to get started, and then we're going to get to it. Hang on. Okay, so here's basically what we have. This is the oil we're going to use. This is what they recommend, a 0W40. If you don't know what the W stands for, it stands for winter. So this number here is winter. Oh, sorry. And the lower the number here, the better the oil will flow when it's cold. So you need your oil, you need your oil filter. I try to use wicks, but if the parts store doesn't have wicks, I try to stick with the manufacturer. Other than that, you'll need a drain pan, oil filter wrench of some sort. I'm not sure which one this will take just yet because I haven't done an oil change on it yet. You'll either need a wrench to loosen your drain plug or a socket and ratchet. And here's what we're going to be doing. And I know most of you guys don't have a lift. I will go over jacks and jack stands as well during all this. Where to jack it, where to place your jack stands, all of that. I'll do that when the car's in the air and we're under the car. One of the most important things is your safety equipment. Jack stands. Man, do not use Harbor Freight jack stands ever. Invest in a good set of jack stands because your life could depend on it. Be right back. Now we have the hood open, and I'm going to show you, typically on all newer vehicles, they're going to tell you right here on the oil cap, this is where you put the oil in, what oil is recommended. So this one says synthetic engine oil recommended and 0W40. That's the weight they want you to run. You can change it. It's not going to hurt anything if you can't find 0W40. But that's what they designed this engine to run in, and typically it'll run good with what if you use what they recommend. They don't. This one actually doesn't recommend brand. A lot of them actually will recommend a brand, which I don't ever follow that. I run what brand I want, depending on what we're doing. But I'm gonna get the car in the air, get some lights under there, and we'll be right back. I have the car in the air, but before I get started and get everything set up, I wanted to mention this right here. This is not on every vehicle. I'm gonna have to take this off so I can access the oil pan and the oil filter. So it even says on it, remove for engine service. So you may or may not see this. Very few vehicles actually have it where you have to remove it before you can service it. But this one does. It's not a big deal. It's 4 bolts and just an extra step. Okay, like I said, this is the first time I've done this oil change. Wasn't expecting this pan under here, but we're gonna go ahead and get it off and let's see what's happening, what's underneath. And that's all there is to it. So now we have access to the oil pan. Okay, so it's got a 13mm drain plug. That's right here. It'll be at the bottom. This will be the only one in the bottom of the pan. And then the oil filter's right here. Easy access for both. It's pretty good size, so I'll be able to use my band wrench and 13mm socket. Be right back. Grab my tools and we'll get to it. I'm back. Got the filter, tools, and I went ahead and brought a quart of oil down here with me, and I'll tell you why here in just a minute. Let me adjust this camera just a little bit. Sorry I haven't shaved you guys. hadn't really wanted to. Okay, so I've got my drain pan right here. It's since I'm working under a lift and have my shop, I have my big drain pan that I don't have to empty every time. So that's what I'll be using. And anyway, you'll be able to see it. Sometimes they're really stubborn with the wrench, so sometimes the ratchet's better. So what you do, loosen it a little bit. And now at this point, it's a good time to, you can maneuver your drain pan around. Now you can start with your filter. Now every location for your filter is going to be different, but you'll see it. Well, you might see it. Some engineers, I think they think it's a game to put it in the hardest place possible. But this one, pretty easy, just right here. There's not a whole lot of room for a wrench, but I think we'll be able to manage. So I just put my band wrench in, and this one was actually not tight, not very tight. Wasn't leaking, but any less. And it actually was changed at the dealership that we bought it from. So not very good on them. And after a few turns, it should start draining. There we go. And then we'll just let that drain. Now, you can do it one of two ways for your filter, your new filter. You can take your filter out of the box. You see this little gasket right here, this little O-ring? You want to lubricate that. So you can do one of two things. You can either take a little bit of the old oil, it won't hurt anything, and just rub it on around the gasket. You don't need a whole lot. You just want to lubricate that. Because if you don't, this is going to stick to the engine, okay? It's going to be hard to get off, and if you don't notice it off the old filter and you put this new filter on, it's going to be two gaskets together. Well, it's going to leak and you're going to have problems. So if you lubricate this, that prevents that from happening. It prevents it from getting stuck to the oil filter housing. And then when you take it off, it'll come off, and I'll show you here in just a second. Okay, so that filter pretty much didn't quit dripping. All right, so you see, really kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can get it in the light here. But this one has a Mopar filter, really slick. And the gasket is right here. So that it was lubricated at the dealership where they did the oil change, which is a good thing. So, always have your rag handy. I use these little rubber gloves just to keep the oil and junk off my hands. Sometimes on something simple like this. I don't usually do it when I'm building cars, but something like this I normally do. So while your oil's still draining, you can take your new filter, and you might want to visually look up at where the filter goes and make sure that gasket's not there, and then just screw it on. Tighten it up hand tight, as tight as you can get it with your hand. And if you're using a plier style or wrench, don't do this. But if you're using a band style, if you stay at the very bottom, you put another, just a little bit, maybe a one turn, a half a turn on the filter. Just so it's snug. You don't want it over tight, but you don't want it too loose for sure. If you have it too loose, it will leak. Now that that's done, fortunately this car doesn't have a channel where that oil drains into and it's going to sit. We don't have to wipe anything out. So at this point, pretty much all the oil, it's still got a little bit trickling, but it's not enough to really matter. Another thing on your drain plugs, this end is a magnet. You always want to look at it. If it's got a bunch of stuff on it, a bunch of metal shavings or anything like that, you might want to look into seeing what's going on. Some metal shavings, sometimes that's normal, especially if it's car's brand new or the motor's brand new, kind of normal. But if you got an excessive amount of metal on the end of this drain plug, you need to look and see what's causing it. But all you do here is you just put it back in the hole. That's what she said, right? Okay, run it up. Then grab your ratchet and just good and snug. You don't want to over tighten it because you really don't want to strip out the hole pad. So at this point, we're almost done under here. If it was a normal car, we would be done. But seeing how it is not, I'm going to push this out of the way. Seeing as how this is not a normal vehicle, it has this handy dandy pan down here. We got to put this back. So pop that down just a little bit, line the holes up. And it's just a 10 millimeter. I'm using this for ease of quickness for this video because I use these constantly. If you are in the market for an electric impact or ratchet or any electric tool for that matter, I use the Milwaukee's. They're the M12 and the M18. They've been great. I use every one of them. Oop, be right back. I use the impacts, I use the ratchets, the cutoff wheels, the Dremel tool. And all their batteries interchange. If it's an M18, all the M18s are interchanged. If it's an M12, all the M12s. And this one is an M12. So it has this style of battery. They also make bigger batteries. This is a little 1/4 inch, so it doesn't use a whole lot. I usually use one of these little ones on it. My 3/8 and my 1/2 inch drive, they get used a lot, especially the 3/8. And I run the bigger battery on it that lasts longer. So with this back on, we're done under here. So it's time to move under the hood. Okay, so got the car down. We're done underneath. I will touch on this. Most of these newer cars do not have any grease certs, so there wasn't anything to show there. I believe my truck may have one, so on that video, on the diesel truck video, I'll show you that. But if it does have it, I really don't know if it does or not. I can't remember. Anyway, so now we got the car back on the ground. We're up here. Here's all we're gonna do. Take your oil cap loose, insert your funnel, and then I'll look the capacity up on this car, okay? Since this is the first change, I don't know. I looked it up on the internet. We've got conflicting stories. I read 6 quarts and I read 6.9 quarts. So I bought 7 quarts of oil and we're going to put 6 in it. We're going to start it. We're going to make sure we don't have any leaks. Then we will check the oil and make sure it's full. If it's not full, we'll add some. If it is full, then we're good. One thing I will say, you need to, when you start the car, you have to start it to check your pressure. Make sure you don't have any leaks because you want to find it here, not out on the road. You need to do that because your oil level will drop. If you change the oil, put oil in it, and check your oil right after you put the oil in it before you start it. If you're at capacity, it's going to be high because that filter, I mean, depending on filter size, they can hold up, 1/2 quart of oil, a whole quart of oil. These smaller cars tend to hold, 1/4 to 1/2 quart. Now the diesels, the trucks, some of them hold 1 quart, 2 quarts even, some of them. So keep that in mind. Fill it up, what you think is going to fill it, or get yourself close. Start it, check it, then go from there. I know this oil probably looks black on the video, It's not. It's purple. It's the name, Royal Purple. I like Royal Purple oil. I don't have any issues with it. I've ran it in a lot of cars. I typically don't run synthetic in my hot rods, but this car here is a stock car. They recommend synthetic oil, so that's what we're going with. One more, and then we'll be able to put the cap back on, start it, and test it, see what's going on. Okay. Grab a rag. And now I'm going to get in the car and start it. Normally I would take you with me, but it's on the stand and I don't want to have to reset it. Be right back. Okay, that was long enough for it to run. You don't have to run this a whole long time. When they leak up from the oil filter, they are spraying. I mean, it's all the oil pressure that the engine has. They're spraying. It's spraying all out. It's very noticeable. So it's not necessary to let it run for a long time. As long as it gets oil pressure on the gauge, a couple of seconds, you're good. So shut it off, let it sit a minute. Oil dipstick on this car is right here. They're different everywhere. They're all different styles, but they're all work the same. And this one took exactly 6 quarts. So you can, I don't know if you can see on the stick there, but it's full anyway. So now, if you're doing your maintenance on your car, and this car, I know it's a little bit different car, but then again, it's not really. While you're here, you want to check everything else. You want to check your power steering fluid, check your brake fluid, check your coolant level, check your washer fluid. You want to check all of that stuff while you're here. Look at your battery. So this one here actually goes, this little coolant reservoir actually goes to the supercharger. It's full. We're not going to have to mess with that. Then the brake fluid, everything else is over this direction. So my power steering fluid's right here. We take it off. I mean, most of these you don't even have to take the cap off. Like I said, this is the first time I've really been under here because I haven't had to do anything to this car. But it does have a minimum and maximum on the side of the tank here. It's good. A lot of these you can visually see, like this radiator. Don't ever take one of these off hot, ever. Wait till it cools off. But this one, I can see the level is good through the tank. And then back here, under this little panel, which has never been off, by the way, is my brake fluid. See, it's good. Pop the little panel back down. You should never really have to add brake fluid until you do your brakes. Those are designed, it's a sealed system, basically. I mean, you can add fluid to it, but it's still a sealed system. So you shouldn't lose any. If you're losing brake fluid, you have an issue. Now, the level will drop as your pads wear because it takes more fluid to push the pistons on the brake caliper out further. So don't be alarmed if the level is going down. But if you have to add some because it's really, really low, then you have a leak somewhere and you have an issue, a major issue that you need to address before you drive again. So just keep an eye on that. That'll about wrap it up on the Hellcat oil change. I'm going to try to do some more of these videos and we'll progressively get into more complex stuff. I know this probably won't get a whole bunch of views from you experienced guys, which I wouldn't ever expect it to. But if I can help one person learn how to do this that's interested in it, hey, it's worth it to me. Anyway, so if y'all like this video, like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing more. They're going to get progressively more complex. As I have stuff to do, I'll do brake pads, change tires, stuff like that. Just basic stuff. Obviously, I'm probably not going to do a tutorial on LS swap or something of that nature. I may do one on the cam swap I'm going to have to do here shortly. But as far as maintenance, I will do one as my maintenance needs to be done. See y'all later.